We're going to cover meaningful use. Again, as with privacy and security, if you've noticed your reading list, you will see that it is very large. Meaningful use is a huge body of work. And again, in deference to that, we're going to split this module across 2 weeks. We won't be splitting it up by meaningful use stage 1 or meaningful use stage 2 or 3. We're going to break it up by reading first, along with discussion group and a forum, our discussion forum group, and a activity. And then the second week, we will dive even deeper, do our activities, discussion group, and assessment questions. Meaningful use is a driving factor in the field these days. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, in conjunction with the Office of the National Coordinator and a variety of professional organizations, have banded together to start to require that providers, healthcare providers, use their electronic health systems now in a meaningful way. Not just collecting the data, but collecting the data well, starting to do quality measures and quality work, outcomes-based, best practices, etc. What are some important things to know about meaningful use? Well, meaningful use is associated with the EHR incentive program, Electronic Health Records Incentive Program, that is sponsored by both Medicare and Medicaid. In this program, practitioners receive amounts of money based on what year they are in the program, how much of that population they serve, Medicare and Medicaid, and how well they meet the criteria. Meaningful use has been broken up in, at this point, 3 stages: stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. There's been some discussion of a stage 4, but there's nothing at this point that really suggests that they're going there yet. In fact, meaningful use stage 3 has been put off slightly because of both vendor and practitioner difficulty meeting those goals and guidelines. Each stage of meaningful use has 2 years in it. So when I'm doing meaningful use stage 1, I do it stage 1, year 1 and 2, and then I do stage 2, year 1 and 2. Okay? It gets complicated. It's not associated with the calendar year that somebody's doing their meaningful use. It's all about which stage are you in and what year of that stage are you in. So when you're talking to a practitioner or an office, or you are employed by one, you'll hear people say that I am in year 3 of the program, but year 2 of meaningful use. How does that work? Well, there was also a pre-stage to meaningful use, which was called AIU, Adopt, Implement, or Upgrade. That first year of participation, if people chose to go that way, allowed them to simply show that they were seeing a certain proportion of Medicare or Medicaid clients, and that they had purchased, were implementing, or were upgrading a certified electronic health record. Certified electronic health record. There's another part of this. You can't participate in the meaningful use program unless you have an ONC certified electronic health record. Those are certified by 2 different years. There's a 2011 certification and a 2014 certification. The 2014 certification was done to make sure that anybody using that particular electronic health record could meet stage 2 requirements. The 2011 ensured that you could meet stage 1 and AIU. So we've got an additional stage, the AIU. Only Medicaid providers could participate in AIU. Medicare providers went straight to meaningful use. That's not to say that Medicaid providers couldn't go straight to meaningful use, but none that I worked with did, except for the hospitals. And they were ahead of the curve in a lot of ways over private practices. Okay, what does that all mean to you as a health IT professional? It means that when you're working in a practice, and depending on what stage that practice is in, you're going to have to be familiar with the standards. You're going to have to know what kind of information they are trying to extract from that system in order to use it meaningfully and in order to report it to the state or federal government to comply with meaningful use. So you're going to have to learn those stages. The information is there if you're in a certified product. The information you should be able to get out of it if it's in a certified product. However, CMS and ONC have been making modifications as we go. Rule changes, different interpretations of rules, extensions, and other sorts of things that impact the health IT professional. In my own world, every time the feds change the rule or extend it or modify it, I have to look at my system and ensure that it can still do what we need it to do in the way we need it to do it. And then make sure that if there are any modifications to be made, I can make them. Hopefully that will not have a large impact on your practice, more on mine, because on our end, we also administer the program that determines if your practices are complying. So all of our tools to measure your tools have to be adjusted every time the rules change. All of that being said, it's a good idea as a health IT professional who's working in an environment where they are trying to obtain the meaningful use standards that you keep abreast of all changes coming out of CMS. If you go to their website and get on their listserv, you will be a happier camper. There are also, when we cover standards, there's something called a QRDA, Quality Reporting Data Architecture, and that's QRDA 1 and QRDA 3. Those are transactions that involve the provider, either as an individual provider or the practice as an aggregate, reporting some of their clinical quality measures electronically. As opposed to, at this point, depending on someone's certification, they may have to report those standards in a semi-automatic fashion. They may have you extract the data and then send it in another method, FTP, or some other method of sending the materials rather than having the system automatically generate and send it through a health information exchange or other method. So when we go through standards, you want to pay attention to the QRDA1 and QRDA3. Meaningful use is complicated. And in the segments, if you haven't adjusted to that idea, you will when you start doing the readings. You can't memorize them all. It's just like privacy. You're not going to memorize all of HIPAA, and you're not going to memorize all of meaningful use. You need to be familiar with the stages, what's expected to be accomplished in each stage, and the measures that show you have accomplished those standards. The meaningful use standards in each stage are broken up into core measures and objectives. And then there's a section where they get to select certain measures. The provider group gets to select certain measures they want to meet or that are more appropriate for their particular practice. Be aware of what the goal is in your agency. Find those menu sets, those core sets, and help inform your agency about which ones you can meet and which ones you might need to work more on to meet, and take the time to look into the quality of the data. Just because people have been entering something into a system doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most high quality data. You will be an active participant in meaningful use. Take the time to read the standards, try to organize them in your head. Again, don't try to memorize them. You're just going to put yourself over the edge if you do. Understand that the goal of meaningful use is for practitioners to follow best practices and to use their electronic health records in the most meaningful and useful way possible in today's market with today's technology.